drop on senators' desks, Levy's global market share down 32%, Oreos losing shelf space in Europe and Asia, Johnson & Johnson hemorrhaging trust in emerging markets. And yet, on camera, U.S. politicians wave it all away. This is just a temporary adjustment. America's brands are eternal. The word echoes like wishful thinking. For decades, U.S. leaders equated global commerce with American commerce. They believed their brands were not just products, but institutions as unshakable as the dollar or the Constitution. But history is less forgiving. In the 19th century, British lawmakers once said the same of their textiles, dismissing Indian mills as regional curiosities. Within 2 decades, Manchester factories shuttered, while Indian cotton surged across the globe. The empire that once clothed the world became irrelevant in its own markets. Now, Washington risks repeating that blindness. The strategy is denial. Officials blame trade barriers, overregulation, Asian protectionism, and anti-American sentiment. Rarely do they admit the simplest truth. American products no longer inspire trust, excitement, or loyalty. The second strategy is arrogance. Legislators call for tariffs on Canadian goods, convinced that force can reverse consumer choice. But tariffs cannot make a Parisian mother trust Johnson's baby lotion again. They cannot make a Korean teenager believe Levi's jeans are cooler than carbon-neutral Canadian denim. Meanwhile, inside corporate boardrooms, panic replaces denial. CEO of major U.S. multinationals beg Congress for subsidies, tax breaks, protection. They fund ad campaigns to reignite the spirit of American brands. They hire consultants to repackage Oreos as heritage snacks or Levi's as authentic denim. But the campaigns fall flat. Heritage is only attractive if the present feels vibrant. Authenticity only works if consumers believe it. Behind the polished facades, the numbers worsen. A leaked Department of Commerce memo warns, U.S. consumer goods exports fell 18% in the first half of 2025. Canada, once dismissed as a junior partner, has overtaken the U.S. in snack exports to Europe and Asia for the first time in history. Still, Washington clings to its myth. America cannot be displaced. But myths do not survive contact with markets. And as one congressman mutters off record, staring at the latest charts, if Canada can steal our shelves in Paris, Delhi, and Tokyo, what's next? The world doesn't need us at all. For the first time, the unthinkable begins to whisper through Washington's corridors. The end of American consumer dominance may not just be coming, it may already be here. Part 6: The cultural collapse. For more than half a century, American brands were more than product. They were symbols, shorthand for belonging to modernity itself. A can of Coke was not a drink. It was the taste of freedom. A pair of Levi's wasn't denim. It was rebellion. An Oreo wasn't a cookie. It was childhood, sweetness, a ritual passed from parent to child across continents. But in 2025, those symbols no longer resonate. Scroll through TikTok in Jakarta, Mumbai, or Seoul, and the transformation is clear. Young influencers aren't flaunting U.S. snacks or jeans. They're showcasing Canadian oat milk lattes, thrifted Toronto streetwear, maple syrup, wellness, gummies, hashtags like #EcoCool and #MapleLife trend, where once it was #American Dream. Music videos tell the same story. Hip-hop, once inseparable from Nike and Coca-Cola, now features Canadian minimalist brands on artist wardrobes and product placements. Korean idols casually sip Canadian beverages on stage. European DJ remix tracks not sponsored by Pepsi but by carbon-neutral Canadian water companies. Even in Hollywood, the shift is visible. American films still dominate box offices, but the cultural framing is fractured. In Paris, teenagers wear Canadian denim jackets to screenings of Marvel movies, then mock the blatant U.S. product placements on TikTok. In India, audiences laugh when a superhero reaches for a Coke, so fake, comments flood in. The cultural collapse spreads most painfully in the home. For generations, American products were embedded in family rituals. Oreos with milk before bed, Johnson's lotion after a baby's bath, Kraft mac and cheese at weeknight dinners. But trust is gone. Scandals over ingredients, health, and safety have eroded confidence. Parents across Europe and Asia no longer associate U.S. brands with care, they associate them with risk. Canadian companies step into the vacuum with ruthless subtlety. Their products don't just claim safety, they perform it. QR codes on baby lotion bottles link to lab reports. Packaging on cereals includes carbon footprints. Maple-branded campaigns center on trust, transparency, togetherness. They don't sell rebellion. They sell reassurance. And for a generation raised amid climate anxiety, health scares, and digital mistrust, reassurance is the ultimate currency. The result is profound. America is no longer the cultural default. This collapse mirrors earlier falls in history. In the 19th century, French wine dominated the world's tables until scandals over adulteration allowed Italian and Spanish vineyards to surge ahead. In the 20th century, British fashion houses once set global trends until Paris and Milan displaced them, leaving London to play catch-up. Now, America faces the same fate. The loss is not just economic, but existential. To lose markets is to lose revenue. To lose culture, to lose identity. In cafes from Berlin to Bangkok, when a maple leaf on a package now feels fresher, safer, and cooler than the stars and stripes, the world is no longer American. And the scariest part for Washington, no one seems to miss it. Part 7 Wall Street awakens for months. Investors brushed it off. Temporary turbulence. Consumer cycles. The American brand always bounces back. But by late 2025, Wall Street can no longer deny reality. The numbers bleed red. Levi-Strauss, stock down 47% from its January peak. Mondelez, owner of Oreo, market cap slashed by $68 billion in under a year. Johnson & Johnson, its consumer trust division, spun off entirely after repeated global boycotts. Once untouchable titans now look like hollowed relics, their charts tracing steady, sickening decline. Meanwhile, Canadian firms are on fire. Maple Foods International surpasses Kellogg's in global snack revenue. Northern Denim, a Toronto-based startup, overtakes Levi's in European sales. Clear Spring Baby Care, once a niche Canadian brand, becomes the fastest-growing infant care company in Asia. And investors notice. On the Toronto Stock Exchange TSX, trading floors buzz with an energy unseen in decades. Analysts who once treated Canadian equities as sleepy, secondary bets now call them the new blue chips. Financial headlines blare. TSX becomes world's most dynamic consumer goods market. Wall Street jealous as Maple brands surge. The global indices confirm the shift. By Q3 2025, the MSCI Global Consumer Goods Index gives Canadian firms a combined 21% weighting, overtaking U.S. companies at 19%. Sovereign wealth funds in the Middle East and Asia quietly rebalance portfolios, trimming holdings in U.S. consumer giants and redirecting billions toward Canadian equities. Hedge funds short Levi's, Coke, and Oreos while going long on oat milk, eco-snacks, and baby care firms north of the border. The symbolism is brutal. For a century, Wall Street was not just an exchange, it was the scoreboard of global capitalism. To see Toronto and Vancouver eclipsing it in consumer sectors feels less like a correction, and then the pressure shows. CNBC pundits, once smug defenders of the resilient American brand, begin to panic on air. Fund managers talk of a structural collapse in U.S. soft power industries. Private memos circulate in Silicon Valley warning that if consumer trust shifts north, tech could be next. For Washington, the nightmare is not just cultural or political anymore, it's financial. Global capital, once addicted to American consumer companies, is now flowing away at historic speed. It is the harshest verdict possible. Markets have spoken. The world no longer believes in the American brand. Part 8 The global domino effect. The fall of Levi's and Oreos should have been just about jeans and cookies. But empires never collapse in silos. Culture bleeds into finance, finance bleeds into politics, and politics bleeds into power. By 2026, America's decline in consumer goods sets off a chain reaction across the global system. 1. Technology loses its aura for decades. Silicon Valley was wrapped in the halo of American cool. iPhones, Teslas, MacBooks, they were not simply devices, they were extensions of the American dream. But when Coca-Cola and Oreos become symbols of distrust, that halo dims. Parents in Asia who refuse Oreos at the dinner table begin questioning iPads in the living room. Environmental scandals around Tesla's lithium mining are amplified by the same Canadian ad campaigns that dethroned American snacks. Meanwhile, Canadian firms launch Maple Tech devices marketed as ethically sourced, carbon neutral, and designed for longevity. The shift is slow but visible. By 2027, Canadian-made laptops outsell Apple in Scandinavia and parts of Southeast Asia. Trust, once America's greatest export, now belongs to Canada. 2. Entertainment fragmentation. Hollywood still produces billion-dollar blockbusters, but its dominance no longer feels inevitable. South Korean dramas, Indian epics, and European streaming series fill global feeds. And in a twist of irony, Canadian studios backed by the profits of Maple Foods and Northern Denim start financing films that subtly brand Canadian culture as aspirational. It isn't just about storytelling, it's about placement. Where Marvel once placed Pepsi cans, new global hits feature Canadian oat milk and eco denim. America's movies become vehicles for nostalgia, while Canada's productions become vehicles for the future. 3. Diplomatic leverage crumbles. For most of the 20th century, American soft power meant leaders around the world lined up to pose with U.S. presidents. Sharing a Coke was sharing alignment with Washington. Wearing levies was alignment with liberal democracy. Now, it is different. A Nigerian president accepts Canadian baby care aid instead of U.S. formula shipments. A Southeast Asian leader wears a northern denim jacket in a viral photo op. When Canadian diplomats arrive with food security packages branded in maple leaves, they are greeted as partners, not imperial sponsors. The U.S. State Department, stripped of its cultural halo, finds its bargaining table empty. No jeans, no Coke, no dream, no leverage. 4. The identity crisis within America. Perhaps the most dangerous domino falls at home. Americans begin to feel it in their bones. The world does not want what they make. Teenagers in Chicago scroll TikTok and see Canadian fashion hailed as the new global standard. Terrence in Texas hear about foreign recalls on Johnson & Johnson while praising Canadian transparency reports. The very act of buying American no longer feels patriotic, it feels insecure, even outdated. For the first time since the 19th century, America is not the center of the consumer universe. And without that role, who is it? The dominoes have fallen. America has not just lost markets. It has lost the gravitational pull that kept the global system in orbit around it. And empires, once they lose their center of gravity, do not drift, they collapse. Part 9. The Political Reckoning. By 2027, the crisis is undeniable. What began as falling sales of Oreos and levies has metastasized into a full-blown identity collapse. America is no longer the world's brand, and inside Washington, the knives come out. Congress in panic mode. Hearings dominate Capitol Hill. CEO of Coca-Cola, Mondelez, Levi-Strauss, and Johnson & Johnson are hauled in front of hostile committees. Senators thunder. How did we lose the global consumer market to Canada of all places? What happened to American trust? Is this corporate negligence or national betrayal? Executives sweat under the lights. They talk of changing global preferences and market realignment. But the truth is too large to hide. The world simply stopped believing in America's story. The great blame game. Politicians scramble to weaponize the crisis. Populists on the right blame woke branding and globalization, demanding tariffs on Canadian imports and a return to pure American production. Progressives on the left argue that corporate greed poisoned America's reputation, pushing for green regulations, trust busting, and a Marshall Plan for rebuilding consumer trust. Centrists are paralyzed, warning that America must adapt but offering no plan. The debates turn venomous. The cultural war that once simmered now burns. Jeans, sodas, cookies, baby products, each becomes a battlefield symbol in America's civil fight over identity. The Patriot Brand Act. In a desperate move, Congress drafts legislation. The Patriot Brand Act. It promises subsidies for made-in-USA goods, heavy tariffs on Canadian imports, and even tax breaks for Americans who buy U.S. brand. But the bill backfires. When passed in 2028, American products become artificially expensive at home while remaining unpopular abroad. Shoppers resent paying more for Oreos when cheaper, healthier Canadian snacks are on the shelf. On TikTok, memes explode. Pay more for less. That's the Patriot way. What was meant as salvation becomes humiliation. The presidency under siege. By the 2028 election, the crisis defines everything. Debates aren't about foreign wars or tax policy, they're about Oreos, levies, and Coke. Candidates spar over who lost the brand war. The sitting president, whoever it is at this point, cannot escape blame. Approval ratings sink. Protesters march under banners reading, "If the world won't buy America, why should we?" A nation looking in the mirror. The reckoning is more than political, it's existential. For over a century, America had exported not just goods but a vision of itself. Sweet, stylish, desirable. Now that vision lies in ruins. The rest of the world has chosen a new model, and America must confront the unthinkable. Without its brands, without its consumer halo, without its global trust, what is America? The political crisis is only beginning, because when a nation built on being the world's dream finds that dream rejected, the next step is always darker. Part 10. The Fall of Confidence. The political chaos of 2028 does not remain confined to Capitol Hill. It seeps outward, poisoning Wall Street, consumer behavior, and America's role in the global economy. What was once a cultural crisis becomes a financial earthquake. 1. Wall Street loses faith. For decades, American brands were the backbone of the stock market. Coca-Cola, Johnson & Johnson, Procter & Gamble, forever stocks, considered safer than gold. By 2028, those same stocks are radioactive.